I saw it coming before it happened. Not because I'm some omniscient son of a bitch, though the press likes to paint me that way, but because I know her. I know the way Charlotte tilts her chin when she's lying, the way her left hand drifts to the base of her throat when she's guilty, and the way she laughs too loud at jokes that aren't funny when she wants a room to stop paying attention to something else. Tonight, the something else was Derek Lane. Relax, Julian, she'd said earlier, while the makeup artist fussed over a highlight on her cheekbone. It's just another gala. Smile, nod, cut the checks. You're good at that. I didn't bother answering. We both knew I was better at reading balance sheets than reading her these days, and that was by design. She'd made sure of it. 3 months of late nights at the office, 14-hour gaps in her shared calendar, a sudden coldness in bed that no silk sheet could explain. Mr. Vance, our PR handler, Marissa, whispered as I stepped away from a cluster of donors. Wall Street Journal wants 2 minutes. Tell them I'm busy. I said, not breaking stride. My eyes were on Charlotte across the room. She was in navy satin. The kind of dress that costs more than most people's cars, but looks like nothing at all exactly how she liked it. Derek was beside her, leaning in too close, his hand resting on the small of her back. Not discreetly, not accidentally, on purpose. I watched him laugh at something she said, watched her lean into it, watched the way her fingers brushed his wrist under the pretense of adjusting her bracelet. You gonna stand here all night brooding, or you gonna play the part? That was Nate, my SOO, handing me a tumbler of scotch I didn't ask for. I'm playing it, I said, just not the way she thinks. He followed my gaze. Christ, Julian, not here. She picked the venue. I said flatly, she can own the consequences. Nate exhaled. Don't do anything stupid. Too late, I muttered and walked toward them. Charlotte saw me coming. I caught the flicker in her eyes' annoyance, not surprise. She hated it when I disrupted her choreography. Julian, she said smoothly, turning just enough to include me without excluding Derek. Derek was just explaining the Q4 rollout for the Helsinki project. Derek smiled, the kind of smile that's all teeth and no warmth. Mr. Vance, always a pleasure. It's Julian, I said, even though we both knew he called me that to get under my skin, and I'm familiar with the rollout. I approved the capital. Charlotte's jaw tightened. We're discussing the marketing angle, not the financing. Right, I said, because marketing is where you add the spin. Derek chuckled, sharp as always. I didn't laugh. I looked at Charlotte. You good? She blinked, caught off guard by the directness. Of course. Then lose the attitude, I said quietly. Or at least save it for the car. Her lips parted shock. Then anger, but I was already moving past them, heading toward the terrace doors. I needed air, or silence, or both. Behind me, I heard Derek murmur something, and Charlotte's low reply. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. The terrace was colder than the ballroom, which suited me fine. I stood near the railing, scotch untouched, and watched the skyline. Somewhere out there, my money was moving through fiber optic cables, buying, selling, deciding the fate of companies I'd never visit and people I'd never meet. It was cleaner than this, quieter. I heard the door open behind me. Footsteps, not Charlotte's hers, had a particular click, deliberate and impatient. These were softer. Mayo, she's pissed, Derek said, stepping up beside me. He didn't wait for an invitation. You don't have to ice her out in front of everyone. I didn't look at him. And you don't have to insert yourself into conversations that don't involve you. He laughed. Low. Involved? Julian, I'm the one keeping her grounded while you're off playing God with billions. She talks about you. You know, says you haven't touched her in months. Now I turned my head, just slightly, enough to let him see I was listening. She tell you that over lunch or after hours? Derek's smile faltered, just for a second. Then he recovered. Does it matter? You build her up so high she needs someone to catch her when you decide to stop looking. Build her up, I repeated, tasting the words. That's cute. You think she built sterling dynamics on your marketing angles? I think she's more than your investment, he said, And I think she's starting to realize it. I took a slow sip of scotch, let the silence stretch. Then I said, "You want to know what she realized? That she could stand in a room full of people who owe me favors and still feel small. Because without my name, her realization doesn't buy her a single share stock." Derek's jaw tightened. "Good. You know," he said, voice dropping, "for a guy who controls everything, you're awfully comfortable letting her wander." I set the glass down on the railing. Wander all she wants. But if she crosses a line, Derek, what? He stepped closer. You'll divorce her? Cut her off? Please. You'd have to care enough to notice. I smiled, not because it was funny, because it was exactly what I wanted him to think. Notice this, I said, leaning in just enough that only he could hear. You're a line item. Derek, a rounding error. If I decide your liability, you won't just be unemployed. You'll be uninsurable, unhireable, and uninvited from every room that matters. Test me. His pupils dilated. Fear, thinly veiled. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Smart. I walked back inside without another word. The ballroom was louder now. Laughter, clinking glasses, the hum of a string quartet drowning out the rot underneath. Isken Foshalod found her near the bar, surrounded by board members and donors. She was smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. She looked tired, or maybe just bored. Either way, she didn't see me watching. I drifted toward the edge of the room, nodding at familiar faces. Shaking hands I didn't remember 5 seconds later. My mind was already elsewhere running scenarios. If I pulled seriously funding, how fast would their runway evaporate? If I recalled the bridge loan, who'd blink first? I wasn't angry. Anger is inefficient. I was calculating. Then I saw her move. Not toward me, toward the far end of the terrace. The dark corner where the light from the ballroom didn't quite reach. Derek was already there, half shielded by a marble pillar. I stopped. She stepped into the shadows with him. Close. Too close. I couldn't hear what they were saying over the music, but I didn't need to. I watched her hand come up, rest on his chest, watched his hand slide around her waist, and then she kissed him. Not a brush, not a mistake. A real kiss, the kind that lingers, the kind that says this isn't the first time. My jaw locked, not from rage, from clarity. I turned and walked out the side exit before anyone could stop me. No scene, no confrontation, just a clean exit. The elevator ride up to the private suite was silent. I stared at the numbers climbing 40, 41, 42 and felt nothing, which was worse than feeling everything. Back in the apartment, I didn't turn on the lights. I went straight to the study, powered up the encrypted terminal, and opened the sterling portfolio. $65 billion in exposure. Liquid, illiquid, committed, contingent. Every dollar tied to her name, her company, her future. I scrolled through the holdings, page after page. Then I opened the prenup. The clauses I'd buried in annexes she'd never read. The ones that let me unwind everything without notice if certain conditions were met. Infidelity wasn't explicitly listed because I hadn't needed to list it. Breach of fiduciary trust covered it. And kissing your assistant on a public terrace, captured by a dozen security cameras and probably half the phones in the room, that was breach enough. I leaned back in the chair. The cursor blinked on the execute button. The front door opened at 2:14 a.m. I heard her heels on the marble, the rustle of her coat, the pause when she realized the lights were off, then footsteps toward the bedroom. She pushed the door open. Julian? I didn't move, didn't speak. She flipped the switch. Light flooded the room. She squinted, still in her gown, hair slightly undone. Why are you sitting in the dark? I looked at her, really looked, at the lipstick slightly smudged at the corner of her mouth, at the faint scent of Derek's cologne clinging to her skin, at the way she stood there, waiting for me to make this easy. Pack a bag. I said, voice even, flat. You're not sleeping here tonight. Her expression shifted confusion, then indignation. Excuse me? You heard me. Is this about Derek? Because if it is, you're being. Don't. I cut in, stood up slowly, Walked toward her until I was close enough to see the pulse jumping in her throat. Don't stand in my house and act like I'm the problem. You kiss him like you forgot who signs your paychecks. Now watch me remember who I am. She opened her mouth, closed it, for the first time in a long time. Charlotte Sterling had nothing to say. I stepped past her, back to the desk, sat down, reopened the terminal, the cursor still blinking. Julian, she said quietly, almost a whisper. I didn't answer. Behind me, I heard the bedroom door close. Then silence. I looked at the screen. At the number, $65. 000 One transfer. That's all it would take. I didn't hit the button. Not yet. But I let myself imagine the sound it would make. Click. And then nothing. Just the silence of a woman who'd spent her life building on borrowed ground. Finally realizing the lender had come to collect, I closed the laptop. Tomorrow, I'd start with the first withdrawal. Tonight, I let her wonder why the man who'd given her everything had just taken away the bed. I didn't sleep. Not because I was wired I pulled 3 all-nighters during the 22 short squeeze without blinking, but because sleep would have meant giving her the peace she didn't earn. I stayed at the desk. Terminal dark, phone face down, listening to the silence on the other side of the bedroom door. No crying, no pacing, just quiet, like she was waiting for me to cave. I don't cave. At 5:47 a.m., I stood, rolled my neck, and walked into the kitchen. Started coffee. The bedroom door stayed shut. I scrolled through pre-mark alerts on my phone while the machine hissed. Asia was already reacting to whispers some hedge fund asshole in Hong Kong had caught wind of a liquidity event at Sterling Dynamics. I almost smiled. The vultures didn't even know the carcass wasn't dead yet. By 6:15, I was in the car. No note, no text. Let her wake up in a bed she wouldn't be sleeping in again and figure out. Morning. Mr. Vance. Lisa, my EA, said the second I stepped into Vance Capital's private elevator. She didn't ask why I was in early. She knew better. Get me Green, Mercer, and Diaz on a secure line by 6:30. I said, and pull the Sterling liquidation docs from legal. All of them. Yes, sir. She hesitated. Mrs. Vance's office called twice. They're asking if today's board meeting is still. It's not. I cut in and tell them I'm unavailable to Mrs. Vance until further notice. The elevator doors open onto the 64th floor. Glass, steel, the hum of servers behind reinforced walls. My kingdom, built without her name on a single deed. By 6:32, I was on the encrypted line with Green at Goldman, Mercer at JP Morgan, and Diaz, our chief counsel. Julian, Green started. That oily deference in his voice. Bit early for a Friday. Everything all right with Sterling? Cut the small talk. I said, I'm pulling out. All tranches. All commitments. Effective immediately. Silence. Then Mercer, all of it? Julian, the $12 billion AI infrastructure commitment. Alone, if you yank that before the Fremont close. Her credit facilities cascade. We're talking margin calls by noon. That's the idea. I said. Diaz cleared his throat. You're within your rights under Annex 4, subsection C. But the prenup stipulates a 90-day cooling-off period for voluntary divestment, unless there's documented material breach. I leaned back, documented, tri-security footage from last night's gala. Charlotte Sterling kissing Derek Lane on a terrace, while her husband was across the room. That's material enough. Green exhaled. Christ, Julian, if we execute this clean, it'll crater SD stock before open. She'll be radioactive by lunch. Good. I said, I want her to feel the floor vanish, not read about it in a filing. Mercer again. Cautious. We can structure it as a phase withdrawal. Quietly move the $12 billion into the Luxembourg SPV first. Then, no phases. I interrupted. One transfer. Clean break. I want the $12 billion moved from the Fremont escrow to Vantage Trust by 7:45, before the NYSE opens, before she checks her accounts. Julian, Green said carefully, you realize this makes you look personal. The street talks. Let them talk. I said, they've been whispering about her for months. Now, they'll learn whose name is on the signature line. I ended the call. Looked at Lisa through the glass wall. She was already drafting the internal memo subject line. Sterling divestment. Execution protocol. Efficient. At 7:02, my personal line buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Julian. Charlotte's voice. Tighter than usual. Where the hell are you? Office. I said. My card declined at Dean DeLuca. She said. Disbelief bleeding into anger. My corporate card. My personal Amex. Even the black one. What did you do? Remove your access. I said. All joint accounts frozen as of 6 a.m. You can't just we're married. Julian, you don't get to shut me out like some employee. You stopped being my wife the second you kissed him. I said, voice flat, employees at least pretend to be loyal. She inhaled sharply. It was a mistake. A lapse in judgment. You're really going to bankrupt me over a kiss? Over a kiss you chose to give publicly. After months of lying about where you were and who you were with. Over a kiss that told every investor in that room that you don't respect the man who built the foundation you're standing on. So, yes, Charlotte, I'm going to bankrupt you. You arrogant son of A. I hung up, blocked the number. At 7:19, Derek Lane started calling. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. I played it on speaker. Julian, listen, man, it's not what it looked like. Charlotte's freaking out. And if you tank her company, you're not just hurting her, you're hurting the brand. We can talk this through. Lunch? Just you and me? I deleted it. Lisa buzzed in. Mr. Vance. CFO Halstead is on line 2. He sounds panicked. I picked up. Halstead. Mr. Vance. We just got the alert from Treasury. The Fremont funds are being rerouted. Is this a clerical error? Because if that $12 billion disappears before we close the AI rollout, we miss payroll next week, let alone CAPEX. Mrs. Sterling is in the lobby right now, demanding answers. Tell Mrs. Sterling the answers are in her mirror. I said, and tell her CFO that effective immediately, Vance Capital is recalling all outstanding credit lines, including the $4 billion revolving facility due next quarter. Halstead's breathing hitched. Sir, that's not standard procedure. We'd need 60 days notice per the agreement I signed in 2019. I finished, which includes Section 11. 3. Immediate recall in the event of reputational damage to the primary guarantor. Her little display last night qualifies. Mr. Vance, please, we can negotiate. A gradual drawdown. Give us 6 months to. 6 months? I laughed. Cold. She didn't give me 6 seconds of consideration. Why should I give her 6 months? I hung up, looked at the clock. 7:41. Lisa appeared in the doorway. Transfer complete. $12 billion moved to Vantage Trust. Confirmation codes logged. I nodded. Notify the exchanges. Quietly. Let the market react naturally. Already done, she said. Bloomberg's picking it up. Sterling Dynamics faces liquidity crisis as key backer withdraws funding. I stood, walked to the window. Below, the city looked the same, but one woman's world had just tilted. My phone buzzed again. Charlotte, different number. I answered. You absolute bastard. She hissed, not yelling. Too control for that, which meant she was scared. My CFO just told me. 12 billion? You wiped out my runway before I even finished my first coffee. Should have thought about that before you let him put his hands on you. I said, this is about power. She said, voice trembling now. You can't stand that I'm not yours anymore. You were never yours. Charlotte, you were mine. There's a difference. And now, you're nobody's. She went quiet. Then I'll fight this. In court, I'll drag your name through every deposition. Go ahead. I said, subpoena the footage. Make the jury watch you kiss him while I funded your empire. Let them decide who the villain is. Another beat. Then, quieter, Julian, please, don't do this. I'll end the affair. I'll fire Derek. Just Don't burn it all down. I closed my eyes, not because I was softening, because I wanted to remember this moment. The exact second she realized she wasn't in control. Too late, I said. You had your chance when you chose him on that terrace. Now I choose me, and me doesn't include you. I ended the call, powered down the phone, slid it into a drawer. Lisa was still there. Sir, the media's asking for comment. No comment, I said. And Lisa, if she shows up here, don't let her pass the lobby. If Derek shows up, call security and have him escorted out. Permanently. Understood. I sat back down, opened a new terminal window, pulled up the remaining sterling exposures. $53 billion to go. The morning sun hit the glass, sharp and bright, somewhere in Manhattan. Charlotte Sterling was learning what it felt like to be ordinary. I watched the market tickers start to move, red arrows blooming across Sterling Dynamics listings. One transfer down, $65 billion to go, and I was just getting started. By 10:03 a.m., Sterling Dynamics was down 18%. By 11:17, 29. By noon, trading was halted pending clarification of liquidity position. There was no clarification coming, just a vacuum where my money used to be. I didn't watch the ticker nonstop. I had a portfolio to run, deals to close. But every time I glanced at the monitor, the red deepened. Good. Lisa buzzed at 12:42. Misses. Vance is in the lobby. I didn't look up. I assume security knows the drill. They do, but she's refusing to leave. Says she'll sit there until you talk to her. Then she'll sit. I said, tell building security she's not to be admitted to any elevator, including the freight. And if she causes a scene, they can arrest her for trespassing. Sir, she's crying. I finally looked at Lisa. Good. Let her. She hesitated, then nodded and left. I went back to the merger docs in front of me, but my focus was shot, not because I cared about her tears, because I knew this was just the opening act. Charlotte didn't beg unless she'd exhausted every other option, which meant she was already circling the drain. At 1:15, my cell rang. Unknown number. I answered. Julian, it's Mark Halstead, her CFO. Voice frayed. We got suppliers freezing shipments. TSMC just paused our chip allocation. They're citing payment uncertainty. I've got board members screaming for an emergency session. Charlotte's locked herself in her office. And Derek's telling everyone you're the one burning the house down. Let him talk. I said, he'll be next. Julian, for God's sake, throw us a lifeline. Even a partial reinstatement of the credit line. We can survive a haircut. We can't survive zero. You should have thought about survival before you let your CEO treat my marriage like a quarterly write-off. I said, and tell Derek this. The more he talks, the faster I pull the rest. He wants to be the hero? Fine. Let him watch the dam break. I hung up, checked the internal feeds. Sure enough, Derek was already spinning. Anonymous quotes to TechCrunch. Sources close to Sterling Dynamics suggest a strategic divergence with key backers. Divergence. Cute word for betrayal. I dialed Green at Goldman. Leak something back. I said, make sure the street knows the divergence is between misses. Sterling and basic fiduciary responsibility. Already on it. Green said, word is, her board's drafting a no-confidence letter. They'll push her out by Monday if the stock doesn't rebound. It won't, I said, by 3:30. The lobby situation had escalated. Lisa buzzed again. Security says misses. Vance is soaking wet. Apparently it's raining outside, and she refused to take the car. She's sitting on the marble bench near the elevators, still crying. People are staring. I stood, walked to the floor-to-ceiling glass that overlooked the lobby 40 floors down. Even from here, I could see her, small, slumped, hair plastered her face, surrounded by a half-circle of curious onlookers filming with their phones. I watched for a full minute. No emotion, just observation. She looked up once, as if she could feel me watching. Our eyes didn't meet too far. Too much glass, but she tilted her chin. That old habit. Defiance. Even now, I turned back to my desk. Tell security to stop anyone from filming, and give her a towel if she asks. Nothing else. Sir, is this really? Lisa, I cut in. Do your job. She left. I opened the dossier on Derek Lane. 6 years at Sterling. Started in junior marketing. Promoted 3 times in 18 months after Charlotte took over. Salary, $420,000. Bonus last year, $1. 2M, all approved by me. Every raise. Every option grant my signature. He owed his entire career to my willingness to fund her ego. I picked up the phone, called Nate, run a full background on Derek Lane, credit history, tax liens, personal debts, and find out if he's been shopping a book deal or a Netflix documentary about life inside the Sterling Empire. On it, Nate said, "You think he's already jumping ship?" "I know he is." I said, "Men like Derek don't ride sinking vessels. They find the nearest lifeboat and claim they were steering all along." At 5 p.m. I left the office, didn't take the private elevator, took the executive stairwell down to the garage. No need to pass the lobby. No need to see her face again today. But as the car pulled out onto Park Avenue, I saw her anyway, through the tinted glass. She was still there, a soggy, shivering figure on a marble bench, surrounded by security guards who weren't touching her but weren't leaving either, like a statue in a fountain nobody wanted to admire. My driver glanced in the rear view. "Mr. Vance? Home or home?" I said. The car moved. I didn't look back. That night, I worked from the study. No TV, no news, just spreadsheets and legal briefs. At 8:12, my personal line rang. Private, encrypted. Only 3 people had this number. One was Nate, one was Diaz, one was dead. "Julian," Nate's voice. "Got something on Derek." "Talk." He's been in talks with Andreessen Horowitz since Tuesday, pitching a new vision for Sterling's AI division without Charlotte. He's claiming she's distracted and over-leveraged. They're interested. Julian, interested enough to draft a term sheet. I lean back. And the money? They want him to bring the IP, which he can't do without Charlotte signing off, which she won't do if she's broke. So he's stuck, unless I make her broke enough to sign anything. I finished. Good. Let him dangle. Julian, there's more. Charlotte's been mortgaging her personal assets for weeks. The Hamptons house, the Aspen condo, even the art collection. She's at maybe 72 hours before the banks call those loans. Make it 48. I said, call the lenders. Remind them who holds their commercial paper. Then tell them I consider it a personal favor if they accelerated the recalls. Nate paused. You're really going to strip her down to nothing. She stripped us down to a kiss. I said, fair trade. I hung up, opened the next document. The dissolution of the Sterling Family Trust. My signature would empty it by morning. Another few $100 million gone from her column. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Charlotte's new number. I'm losing everything. Isn't that enough? I stared at the words. Typed a response. Deleted it. Typed again. You didn't ask if it was enough when you kissed him. Why should I? Sent. 3 dots appeared. Vanished. Appeared again. Then a call. I rejected it. She texted again. I'm scared. Julian. I didn't respond. Because fear was the point. Not the screaming. Crying kind. The quiet. Hollow kind that settles in when you realize the safety net isn't just gone, it was never yours to begin with. At 11:47 p.m. I stood by the window. The city lights blurred slightly. Rain streaked the glass. Somewhere out there, Derek was probably celebrating his inevitable rise, and Charlotte was probably staring at a foreclosure notice, wondering how the woman who graced magazine covers last month was now Googling how to file personal bankruptcy. I walked back to the desk, opened the final folder, the $65 billion exit strategy. Step 3 of 7. Each step designed to peel away another layer of her life until there was nothing left but the memory of who she used to be. I ran my finger down the checklist. 10. Freeze joint accounts. 10. Pull $12 billion infrastructure funding. 10. Recall credit lines. accelerate personal asset seizures, trigger bond covenant defaults, initiate SPV unwind, execute final $65 billion transfer. Almost halfway, I closed the folder, picked up the framed photo I'd face down on the desk 3 nights ago. Our wedding day. Charlotte smiling, hand on my arm, looking at me like I was the only man in the room. I set it back down, face up this time, stared at it for a long moment. Then I said it out loud, to no one and everyone. That wasn't the transfer that breaks you. Charlotte, that's coming tomorrow. I turned off the light and let the dark have the rest. I woke at 4:12 a.m., not because of a dream, because my body knew what day it was. Execution day. The kind of day that doesn't come often. But when it does, you don't hit snooze. I didn't check my phone. Didn't need to. Charlotte's silence was louder than her texts at this point. I showered, dressed, skipped coffee, ate nothing. Today required a clear head, not a caffeinated one. Lisa was already at her desk when I stepped off the elevator at 5:30. She didn't say good morning, just slid a thin folder across the table. Pre-market futures are down. Sterling's implied open is minus 34%. Halstead's been calling every 15 minutes. Derek Lane's attorney reached out, wants a pre-litigation conference. And Mrs. Vance's personal assistant called, said she's not doing well. I opened the folder. Inside was a single sheet, the execution matrix for the $65 billion unwind, 7 tranches, 4 clearinghouses, 11 counterparties, every box checked except the last. Any noise from the board? I asked. They're meeting at 8. Emergency session. Charlotte's expected to attend remotely. Halstead's preparing a presentation titled Liquidity Stabilization Options. Useless. Obviously. I echoed. Patch me into the board call. Muted. No video. Done. Lisa said. And Julian? The Wall Street Journal is running a live blog. They're calling it the Sterling Collapse. Let them. I said. History needs a name. By 6 o'clock, I was in the war room, glass-walled, soundproof, 10 screens humming. Nate was already there, running through the pre-flight. All systems green, he said. Goldman's ready on the equity side. JPM's got the credit default swaps primed. Deutsche is handling the European SPVs. We're synchronized for 9:37 a.m. Eastern. That gives us maximum volatility before the 10 o'clock margin calls hit. Derek? I asked. He's at a Sand Hill Road office. Andreessen's letting him pitch the new vision at 9 o'clock. Thinks he's got a $2 billion seed round lined up. He won't. I said, kill the IP transfer. Quietly, tell the general counsel at Sterling to freeze all licensing agreements pending internal review. Make it look like Charlotte's doing. Nate grinned. Already drafted the email. Goes out at 8:45. Signed by her admin. Good. At 8 o'clock, the board call patched through. I kept my mic muted, leaned back, and listened. Halstead's voice. Strained, as you can see. The withdrawal of the Fremont funds has created a $12 billion hole in our Q3 projections. Without immediate bridge financing, we'll miss payroll by next Friday. A board member Sanchez. Former Treasury cut in. Charlotte. You assured us last quarter that Vance Capital's backing was ironclad. What changed? Static. Then Charlotte's voice. Hoarse. There's a personal matter complicating the relationship, but I'm working to resolve it. Resolve it? Another voice Kapoor. The biotech billionaire snapped. You call a 34% pre-market drop. Working to resolve it? Your husband just pulled the rug out from under us. And you're talking about marital counseling? Julian and I. Save it. Kapoor said. I've got shareholders to answer to. If you can't stabilize this by Monday, I'm voting to remove you as CEO. Silence. Then Halstead. Weekly. We're exploring all options. There are no options. I said quietly to myself. Then, louder. Into the empty room. There never were. At 8:45, the email went out. Licensing frozen. Derek's pitch just lost its backbone. At 9 o'clock, Nate murmured, Derek's pitching. Andreessen's already cooling. They're asking why the IP's suddenly unavailable. Let him sweat. I said, at 9:30, market open. Sterling Dynamics cratered, down 41% in the first 3 minutes. Trading halted again. Social media was on fire. Hashtag Sterling collapse trending above hashtag election 2028. At 9:35, Lisa buzzed. Mrs. Vance is downstairs. She's demanding to see you. Security says she's hysterical. Keep her downstairs. I said, and open the blinds on the east wall. Let her see me. At 9:36, I stood by the glass. 40 floors up. Looked down. There she was. No rain this time. Just harsh morning sun. She was staring up, one hand shielding her eyes, the other clutching a leather folder, probably bankruptcy filings. At 9:37, Nate said, 30 seconds. He said, roll my shoulders, place my finger on the enter key, execute. I said, Nate hit the master button. On the screens, the orders flooded the pipes. Equity sales, CDS triggers, SPV liquidations, bond covenant accelerations. $65 billion in commitments evaporating in real time. On the board call, chaos erupted. Alarms, shouting, Halstead screaming. The credit lines just collapsed. All of them were insolvent. Charlotte's voice. Shrill, Julian. I unmuted my line. You're on speaker. Charlotte. Silence. Then, her ragged breathing. You're killing me over a kiss? She shouted. Over a kiss. I stayed calm. Over a kiss you gave willingly, repeatedly, publicly, and over every lie you told to cover it. I'm not killing you. Charlotte, I'm finishing what you started. I loved you. She screamed. No. I said, you love what I built around you. The Gala invites, the Forbes covers, the private jets. You love the illusion of power. Now watch the reality. Please, she sobbed. I'll sign anything. The prenup, the trusts. Just stop. Too late. I said, the transfers are irreversible. By 9:41, Sterling Dynamics will be delisted pending bankruptcy review. By noon, your personal guarantees will be called. By sunset, you'll be living in a rented apartment, wondering which utility gets shut off first. You're a monster, she whispered. I'm the man you married. I said, you just never thought I'd stop cleaning up your messes. I muted the line again. On the screens, the final tranche cleared. $65. 000 gone. Downstairs, Charlotte was pounding on the glass doors. Security was holding her back. She looked small, broken, exactly where I needed her. My desk phone rang. Diaz, the attorney. Judgment entered. Sterling Dynamics is in receivership. Charlotte's personal assets are frozen. Divorce papers are ready for service. Serve them, I said, quietly, but make sure she sees the number. The number? 65 billion. I said, print it on the first page. Bold font. Let her count every zero. I hung up, leaned back. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a hollow ache behind. Not regret, just emptiness. Nate was watching me. That's it. Then, that's it, I said. Downstairs. Charlotte had stopped pounding. She was just standing there, staring up. Then she turned and walked away, shoulders hunched. No entourage, no assistance. Just a woman in expensive clothes with nowhere to go. I pressed the intercom. Lisa, hold all calls for the next hour. Yes, sir. I stood by the window for a long time, watched the city move beneath me, watched the ripple effects of my decision spread, outward suppliers scrambling, competitors circling, reporters speculating. Somewhere, Derek Lane was realizing his golden ticket was worthless. Somewhere, Charlotte Sterling was realizing she'd spent her life building on sand. And somewhere, in the hollow space behind my ribs, I realized that revenge doesn't fill the void. It just changes its shape. I turned back to the desk, picked up the divorce papers. Read the first line. Petitioner seeks dissolution of marriage based on irreconcilable differences and gross marital misconduct. I signed it, dated it, slid it into the outgoing folder. Then I opened a new document. Blank, cursor blinking. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed one sentence. Power isn't in the money. It's in knowing you can burn it all down and still walk away. I saved the file, closed the laptop, and for the first time in 4 chapters, I looked out at the wreckage I created and didn't feel a thing. 6 months. That's how long it took for her name to vanish from the conversations that mattered. Not all conversations of gossip blogs kept it alive for a while, dragging her downfall through think pieces. And where are they now? Slideshows, but on the street. 6 months is a generation. She went from headline to footnote. I didn't follow her closely. Didn't need to. My intelligence network was better than any tabloid. I knew she'd moved into a walk-up in Astoria. 2 bedrooms. Rent stabilized. No dorman. I knew she was driving a used Subaru. Knew she'd applied for a vice president role at a mid-tier logistics firm and didn't get it. Knew she was burning through the last of her accessible cash on a therapist who billed by the 50-minute hour. I didn't gloat, didn't celebrate, just noted the facts and filed them away. Derek Lane lasted 9 days. 9 days between my final transfer and the moment Andreessen Horowitz walked away from the new vision after the IP freeze. He tried to sue Sterling for breach of implied employment contract. The judge laughed him out of federal court. Last I heard, he was consulting for a crypto startup in Miami that would probably implode before Q2. Good riddance. I kept working, kept building. Vance Capital posted its best year in a decade, partly because I reallocated the Sterling capital into defensive plays that outperformed the SP by 11 points. Numbers don't care about kisses. They care about returns. But at night, sometimes, I'd sit in the dark and feel the hollowness. Not guilt, something quieter, heavier, like I'd won a game where the prize was realizing the game wasn't worth playing. Nate noticed, "You're not sleeping," he said one evening in late November. We were in the private dining room at the office. Post-earnings. Just the 2 of us. "I'm sleeping fine," I said. "Bullshit. You stare at the same screen for 20 minutes like you're waiting for it to apologize." I didn't deny it, just swirled the scotch. What's the point of winning if the other side doesn't even remember the war? She remembers. Nate said, "Trust me, I still get feelers from her attorney. They're not looking for money anymore. They're looking for, I don't know, closure? Closures for people who believe in endings." I said, "I believe in math." He shook his head. "You're a cold son of a bitch, Julian, even for us." Us, I repeated. Right. He let it drop. Then, in early December, the call came. Not from her. From her therapist's office, a courtesy notification, legally required because of the safety exception clause in the divorce decree. Charlotte had requested a mediated exchange of personal effects. 1 item only. I almost said no. Almost told Lisa to ignore it. But something curiosity, boredom, the ghost of a man who once loved her made me agree. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop in Chelsea. Mid-afternoon, low light, the kind of place where no one notices a man in a tailored coat or a woman in a thrift store sweater. She was already there when I arrived, smaller than I remembered, hair shorter, no mock-up, hands wrapped around a mug like it was the only warm thing in her world. I sat across from her, didn't order anything. "You look tired," she said, voice flat, no venom, just observation. "You look broke." I replied, same tone, a ghost of a smile. "Touché." We sat in silence for a minute. Then she slid a small manila envelope across the table. I didn't open it. "What is it?" "The keychain you gave me our first Christmas," she said. "The cheap one. From that gas station in Scottsdale. Remember?" I did. It was brass, shaped like a cactus. Cost $7. I bought it because I was too proud to admit I'd forgotten to pack a gift. She'd kept it on her keyring for 12 years. "Why return it?" I asked. "Because it's the only thing you ever gave me that wasn't a transaction," she said. "Everything else had strings, contracts, exit clauses. But that keychain, that was just yours." No ulterior motive. I picked up the envelope, turned it over, felt the weight of it. Nothing. I don't hate you, Julian, she said. I hated you for a while, but mostly, I hated that I needed you to tell me who I was. Without your money, your name, your shadow, I had to figure it out. And it turns out, I'm not very good at it. You were never bad at it. I said, you just preferred the shortcut. Maybe, she said, or maybe you built the maze. So, well, I forgot there was an exit. I looked at her, really looked, not the CEO, not the wife, just a woman who'd lost everything and was trying to decide if she was allowed to keep breathing. You could reinvest. She said quietly, help me back on my feet. No strings, just the start. I shook my head. No, because you still want to hurt me? Because you need to stand on your own now. I said, or fall forever. If I prop you up, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if you earned it, and I'll spend mine wondering if I enabled it. She nodded, like she'd expected that answer. Maybe even wanted it. I am sorry, she said, for the kiss, for the lies, for thinking I could have it all without consequence. I'm not, I said. If you hadn't done it, I'd still be wondering if the marriage was real. Now I know it wasn't. She flinched, just barely. Then she stood, picked up her mug, didn't drink, just held it. Goodbye. Julian, Charlotte. She walked out. No hueto, no drama, just the bell above the door. Ringing once, then silence. I sat there for a long time. Then I opened the envelope. The keychain was tarnished, the paint chipped, but the cactus was still sharp. I put it in my pocket, stood, walked out without touching the coffee. In the car, I didn't tell the driver where to go. Just sat in the back, keychain in my palm, feeling the edges bite into my skin. I thought breaking her would make me whole again. Thought the silence she left behind would be peaceful. Instead, it was just silence, empty, echoing. I looked at the keychain. $7 reminder that the only thing I ever gave her without a contract was the one thing she gave back. I closed my hand around it, and for the first time since the gala, I admitted it to myself. In the dark, when no one could hear, I missed her, not the wife, not the CEO, just a woman who once smiled when I handed her a gas station keychain and said, Merry Christmas. But missing doesn't mean wanting back. It just means remembering. I let the keychain drop into my coat pocket, felt it settle against the lining. Then I told the driver, home, and watched the city blur past, knowing I'd won the war, but lost the peace, knowing I'd never be whole again, knowing I didn't care, and knowing that was the most honest thing I'd felt in 6 months.